12:15 this morning. Sources tell our Adam Schefter the Eagles will sign free agent running back Matt Jones, who was released earlier this week by the Colts. And at 12:50, the Colts continue to add to their offensive line, signing tackle Austin Howard. He started 16 games for the Ravens last season. Howard joins draft picks Quentin Nelson and Braden Smith on a line responsible for keeping Andrew Luck upright. Hello, everyone. On this Wednesday afternoon, I'm Wendy Nix, along with Diana Rossini, Dan Graziano, and Andrew Hawkins. We'll start with news this afternoon out of New Orleans. Fresh off the best season of his NFL career and heading into the final year of his contract, New Orleans Saints running back Mark Ingram has been suspended 4 games. This for violating the NFL policy on performance-enhancing drugs. If the suspension stands, he will be eligible to return to the Saints' active roster on Monday, October 1st. Ingram's agents issued the following statement at the end of the 2017 season as a result of an NFL-mandated random drug test. Mark Ingram tested positive for a substance that was not a performance-enhancing substance nor an illegal substance, but a substance in fact permissible with the possible proper use exemption with the NFL. He has vigorously challenged the test results through the arbitration process. The arbitrator's opinion is due on or before Wednesday, May 16th. Upon having the opportunity to review the arbitrator's opinion, we will explore what further opinions are necessary. In layman's terms, there are certain drugs, Adderall being one, that you can take with permission. In other words, you proactively seek permission. You say you have a problem, you're allowed to take them. And then if you test positive, it's understood. I think that's what they're alleging here, and also saying that perhaps he did not have the proper paperwork in place. Andrew, how do you read this?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right, but isn't that the story we always hear? I mean, there's a protocol in place for a reason. It's the player's duty to make sure he follows that protocol and he doesn't get in trouble. I mean, as simple as that.
It is, and now an arbitrator will make the decision, and I suppose, Dan, then we'll talk about reducing the suspension and all of that.
That's already happened. The statement's odd and misleading because the NFL does not announce the suspension until the arbitration process has already played out. My understanding is that the arbitrator's full written decision is due by May 16th, but the decision has already been reached, and then Ingram will have to serve this 4-game suspension. So I think the statement's a little bit confusing. We've sought further clarity. Hopefully we'll get some as the day goes along from the representatives. But my understanding is Mark Ingram's suspended for the 4 games. If it was a drug that had a therapeutic use exemption with it, then he obviously didn't secure that properly or in time. And if he had, then he probably wouldn't be suspended.
Yeah, Mark Ingram recently changed agents. He has different representation at this point. And 4 games, you think about 4 games in the NFL, you say 4, and it's a little misleading because 4, it's not that much. That's 25% of the season. Yeah. In baseball, that's 41 games out of 162. In NBA, 21 out of 82. That's significant. This is a starting running back. And when I talked to some sources in New Orleans this morning about it, they're of course annoyed. They're angry that they're going to be out with Mark Ingram. Yes, they have Alvin Kamara. That's not the answer, though. This doesn't mean that Alvin Kamara is going to be getting more touches on the ball, taking up more of the workload off because they don't have Mark Ingram. But New Orleans went through a similar situation last year. Willie Snead was out for the first 4 games of the season. And the Saints proved pretty quickly that they were able to fill in that spot. And that's basically what they're going to do here. They're going to bring on another running back they actually already have on their roster. They're not going to go out and get another runner. They're happy with who they have at this point. And while they're, of course, frustrated and disappointed that Mark Ingram, a starter, is going to miss those first 4 games, including a game against the Bucs, they're going to move on here.
Well, what does this mean for Alvin Kamara? Is durability an issue when you consider at some point somebody's got to pick up the slack with these 4 games? They'll spread it around, but
they also re-signed a pretty good quarterback, in Drew Brees this offseason. If they have to throw the ball in New Orleans, it's probably going to be okay, right? Yeah. So they could give. To Diana's point, she's talking to people there. They could keep Kamara's workload the same and spell Ingram with other guys on the roster. They could sign a veteran. Guys like DeMarco Murray are still out there. But they could also throw more. And if they have to give Kamara a heavy workload in a game or 2, then they know they're getting Mark Ingram back in Week 5, so it's not like they're committing to doing it over the course of an entire season.
To be honest, I think this kind of speeds up the process they already have in place. I don't think they were going to re-sign Mark Ingram for the longer term.
That was exactly my next question.
And that's going to be the story in New Orleans this season because Now he's suspended for the first 4 games. First of all, let's just talk about a trade situation because there's some rumors out there. I'm told that is not the case because who's going to pick up a player that's going to be out the first 4 games of the season? He's looking for that contract. I'm also told that he's expected not to be at OTAs because he's frustrated with the contract situation. So it's a bit of a mess there in New Orleans without Mark Ingram those first 4 games, and then he won't be there, and we'll see what he'll do come training camp.
Well, it sounds like
he's going to help your contract.
No, it sounds like he's not at all a mess. I'm not sure they are.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that's approaching 30. He's a running back. We understand the shelf life of running back.
With a lot of tread on those tires, I might add.
Look, this isn't the Cowboys. When the Cowboys lost Ezekiel Elliott to suspension, it was a travesty to this offense. Like you said, the Saints are a pass-heavy team by nature. Alvin Kamara, Rookie of the Year. They're going to look for ways to move on from Mark Ingram eventually, and this just speeds up that process.
You can't take away what that duo did together,
no,
though.
Of course,
and Mark Ingram is playing such a big role in helping shape Alvin Kamara. Rookie season last year, obviously new to the game. And those two have a great relationship, or at least a working relationship out on the field and obviously inside the locker room, because we saw last year every single interview we did with them, they're standing side by side because they have that friendship and you know they're teammates.
Here's the thing about players. Players always want more. They want more responsibility. They want more of a role. So Alvin and Kamara, yes, he's great right now, but eventually when the contract times come around, they say, oh, you're only a third down back or you're a change of. He wants to be the man, and if he does it now, he will. So those conversations may be good now, but eventually they'll come.
But I don't think that the answer is giving Alvin Kamara a heavier workload. That's not what the plan is going to be, because like we said, they've got Drew Brees.
They have Drew Brees. They are likely to throw the ball, but I tell you what, Mark Ingram has some company for better or worse. A handful of folks have gotten 4-game suspensions for PEDs this offseason. Along with Ingram, linebackers Vontaze Burfict and Thomas Davis will miss the first 4 games of 2018. And there's Chargers defensive tackle Corey Liuget and free agent Mark Sanchez, who also have tested positive. Despite his continued interest in a new deal, Odell Beckham Jr. was in attendance for the start of the Giants offseason program and his first mini-camp. That was good news for the New York Giants. In his first public comments since the NFL owners' meetings, Giants co-owner John Mara says he is hopeful Beckham will remain a Giant for many seasons to come.
Do you feel there's a sense of urgency to get a contract done with him?
I wouldn't say a sense of urgency. The contract will be done when it's supposed to get done. I think that's the Dave Gettleman line. And I'm going to adopt
that line?
I'm going to adopt that. I think all spring, all summer, as long as it takes.
Do you see Odell being a Giant long term?
I hope so.
Is signing him this summer a priority, though, or I mean, knowing that if it doesn't happen, there could be other problems that come along with that?
It's not the first contract negotiation we've ever had. It'll get done when it's supposed to get done.
Well, Dan, he's right. It is far from the first contract negotiation he's been a part of. How do you take what John Mara said?
I think he's saying what a team is saying at this point in the negotiation, right? There's no urgency. Excuse me. If a team came out and said there was urgency to get it done, then obviously the leverage shifts to the players. So he's taking the right public stance. The important thing here is the private stance and what kind of communications are going on between the Giants and Odell Beckham and his representation. And if he feels like they're working toward a deal, or they're open to a deal, or that they're confident they'll get something done with him before the season, that puts the relationship in a much better place than what we were looking at a couple of months ago, or even last year when he was sitting out voluntary workouts. He went to the opening of their offseason program this year. And that's significant from the standpoint of a coaching staff that's trying to put in a new offense, that wants to see how he runs coming off of an injury, and all that kind of stuff helps work toward the relationship being in a good place. And I think that's very, very important. Public comments by the owner are what they are. He's saying what he has to say publicly. I think the key thing on this is to make sure that the relationship is strong between player and team, and it seems like it's in a better place than it's been in over the past 12 months.
It does, and Andrew, I would ask you from a player's perspective, showing up to those voluntary workouts seem like an olive branch. I mean, if you're reading the tea leaves, it's enough to say, hey, okay, at least I'm here. We'll see what happens, but I'm making an effort to be a part of this team.
Yeah, I think with some of the way things happened over the offseason, Odell was put in a situation where he had to show up. He had some headlines off the field that had to show, hey, I'm a part of this team, and I want to continue to help us get better. But I will say, they need to get a deal done. Odell wants to get a deal done. No, it's not going to be a problem now as we're just going through shorts and T-shirts, running around. When we get into training camp and he decides I'm not going in on the preseason game, and then if it goes into the season, I don't know. OBJ could be the kind of person to say, hey, I'm sitting out until I get a deal done because I've already gotten injured, and it showed that this is very important to me and to get it done for long term.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, like they criticized when we were making such a big deal, especially when we were at Giants camp the last few weeks covering them, saying, why are you making such a big deal that Odell's there? Odell Beckham Jr. being there is showing, like you said, an olive branch, and they're fixing that relationship, because I think it's safe to say that the relationship was probably put in a little bit of a gray area when we heard the owner talk about maybe possibly trading him for what would we say, 13 first rounders. The fact that they left that business. The fact that they left that door open, that they were open for business, I think surprised a lot of people. I'm sure it surprised Odell, but you know, at the time they were listening to offers. Granted, they didn't hear any that they liked. But now it sounds like they don't want to talk about it because the relationship is good. And Dan's point is probably the best that was made here, which is the important part is what's being said between between Odell's party and the owner.
I will say this is a story until he gets signed. Because if we get into training camp and he's not signed, and there are preseason games and he's not signed, he's not going to want to play in those preseason games. He got hurt in a preseason game last year.
He's doing drills, though, is good. I know it's no contact and they're insured.
Exactly.
Still good.
So it becomes a bigger story if we get to the part of the offseason where you expect him to be on the field and he's still not signed. Because if he's not, I don't think he's going to be on that field.
I agree. And like you said, I mean, yes, this is a completely different take from Mar than we got before when he said, hey, we're open for business. Now it's, hey, we'll get a deal done. We've done deals before. They've never done a deal this big with a wide receiver, I can promise you that.
No, they have not. And John Mara also said in that same conversation, no one is untouchable, clearly sending the message that, hey, listen, we'll see, you know, let's walk the line here. As for the newest member of the Giants offense, Saquon Barkley, of course, has already reported to rookie minicamp. Mara was asked about the expectations for that second overall pick in last month's draft.
He was the #1 player on the board. Everybody felt like he was the best player in the draft, so there wasn't much doubt about that.
Rare
we always have
opportunity,
reservations, but the opinion in our draft room was unanimous that he was the best player in the draft, so I felt very comfortable going with that. As Bill Parcells used to say, let's not get his bus ready for Canton just yet. He hasn't played it down, but you know, we're very excited about him, obviously.
Well, they certainly are excited, and there seems to be every reason to be excited about what Saquon Barkley can do. But how much pressure is the young rookie under, given we have called him, and I quote from Bill Polian, a generational type player?
Yes, this is a lot of pressure. This is New York media.
New York.
And not to mention, this was the can't-miss prospect in this draft. More than all the quarterbacks we talked about, more than the Bradley Chubb, anyone who's seen his combine, anyone who's seen him play and seen his game film knew this was the guy you had to take. He was the safest pick. And, oh, yeah, if you don't get a deal done with Odell, guess what? There's even more pressure.
Ooh, I would say so.
So there's going to be a lot of pressure, and as there should, because he's that kind of prospect.
You heard John Mara say you always have reservations, but we felt like this was the best player in the draft. Mara's reservations have to be rooted in the idea that there were 4 top 10 quarterbacks in this draft, and his team, whose starting quarterback is 37 years old, didn't take one, and instead took this guy. Saquon Barkley is a wonderful player, and we presume that he'll play very, very well for the New York Giants. He is under a great deal of pressure to do that. But if he's not a Hall of Fame caliber player, and I use that because that's what Dave Gettleman has been saying, a gold jacket type of player.
Touched by the hand of God.
And 2 or 3 years from now, they find themselves struggling to replace Eli Manning, and Sam Darnold is a star for the Jets.
That's the issue. There's a lot of
That's where the reservations come in. So a lot of pressure on the young man to be great. Even if he is great, there could be some hindsight where you look back and say, oh, maybe should they have gone quarterback?
Be great. That's about all he can do, I guess.
I'm having such a hard time understanding why so many of the GMs and owners that made these selections in the draft, whether they were in the top 10 or the second round, and making these declarations that these players are going to be mind-blowing, game changers, the way Dave Gettleman went up there. I understood why they were excited. He is the best player in the draft. Not only is he a great player, he's a great guy. I understand the excitement that they have there in New York. But to continually tout, all that does is build the pressure. Why not just go in low-key, kind of quiet, and then if he shocks us, that's great.
That's no fun.
That's not how we do it in the NFL.
That's not how it's a National Football League.
All the pressure, all the pressure.
Well,
man.
listen, the Jets are right there with you because they too were guilty of a little hyperbole when they talked about their draft pick in Sam Darnold. The Jets have set the bar pretty high for the young quarterback. We'll tell you what they think and what they said about Darnold. And never mind 20 years from now. You know what? Hey, you know what today is? May 9th. 5-9.
Like it.
It's 5-9 day here on the
Who's 5-9 here?
That's my day.
I wish I was 5'9".
When you combine Ancestry's DNA test with its historical records, you could learn you're from Ireland, Donegal, Ireland, and your ancestor was a fisherman. With Blue